Hello everyone and welcome to the 5th round of Tata Steel Chess 2026. Once again, we have a lot of players who struggle in this event, and one of them is Vincent Keymer, who was playing against Aravindh, who is also doesn't have a good tournament so far, but let's see what happened between those two. Vincent is seed number 1, so it's very important for him to keep up the pace, because if he lets his, let's say, Hans, Nadirbek go far ahead, he won't be able to win the tournament. So it's very important to get those wins, and especially with the white pieces. And he started with knight f3 ready opening, very popular on this level. I mean, those gems play just whatever comes to mind. They prepare something and they're like, okay, let me try to test my ideas. So knight f64, e6, knight c3, and we're transposing basically to classical queen's gambit positions. So knight d7, c takes d5, it takes d5, and now bishop f4. So the main move is, of course, bishop g5, going to Carlsbad. Bishop f4 is playable, but I haven't seen this playing often. But bishop f4, bishop b4, and now e3. And surprisingly, from this position, generally you get very kind of calm, boring positional play. White are trying to go a3, b4, create minority attack on the queen side, play bishop d3, castle, queen c2, and then at some point maybe h3, bishop h2, and then f3, e4. So in this game we saw kind of different plans. So queen goes to c2, and now pawn goes to g5. So Arvin already creates a lot of let's say not imbalanced, but just a little bit of dangerous play. G5 is a move which, okay, it's not that scary to make as black, but you gotta be prepared that your king will be weakened at some point, and let's say if you castle short, it might be a problem. So bishop goes to e5, attacks the rook, so now castles. He's like, I don't care. I mean, I would care here, honestly. I mean, computer says knight e5 is best, one of the best moves. Rook g8 is one of the, actually the best move is rook g8. But castle, okay, I mean, castle, bishop d3, and that's what I mentioned, bishop d3. And now king suddenly becomes weak, and let's say, there is already a serious blunder that might happen. Let's say, black take on c3, they can't keep up with the pressure. Bishop h7 is a checkmate, because bishop on f5 is a huge monster, and now bishop h7 is a checkmate. So there are already some, let's say, practical problems for black pieces. He goes g4, bishop e4. Now if g takes f3, I believe there is even g takes f3 and then rook g1. So he takes f4, and now queen f4. And once again, the idea is that if g takes f3, he takes a knight queen g4 once again as a checkmate. So you can already kind of feel that. I mean, early on, when white have so many, let's say, tactically mating, checkmating ideas, that something went wrong in the opening. And don't get me wrong, computer might show plus 0.5, but to me in this case is that, I mean, on this level, it's very significant. And yeah, you can't see the past moves, but basically right now, black have one move only. One move only. Other moves are basically nearly lost for black, and Aravindh makes it. He plays a5, which is best, and now king d5 check. Now already rook has to block, and once again, yes, computer might say, oh, that's not such a terrible position for black. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, this is undeveloped, all white pieces are out, so it's complicated for black to play this. I mean, it's definitely easier to play with white. King c4, knight e5 takes, and now a5. Yes, now black might create some excuse that, okay, black have two bishops, so it might get complicated, but I don't know. Queen f4, knight e2, and now a3. Now bishop gets chased away, so bishop c5 is the only square to go to. And now king g3, the idea is to maybe play knight f4, maybe play h3, maybe play f4, which was played on the next move, f4. Now the point is g takes f3 cannot be taken due to the pin, so h5 was played, and now knight f3, knight jumps to g5, and also not letting black go h4. Rook g7, knight g5, h4, queen h4. Now black take on f3, and it looks like, okay, queen c5 is coming, maybe some counterplay, but no, king g3, rook g5, the best way. So, and queen f3. So, to take an exchange actually would result in some problems here, as after f4, indeed, black are getting a lot of counterplay. Knight f4, queen f5, look at the king. It's not castled, bishop f4 is coming, the position is simply lost. So it's very important to take this bishop, to get rid of one only active piece of black. King f2, bishop e6, hd, trying to open up, rook d6, now knight d4, king g3, and very soon Aravindh ended up resigning, because here queen h8, queen g7, rook f8 is coming, and there's not much that black can do. King d7 is the best way, but here queen f5, king c7, and now there's a beautiful maneuver, rook c6. The idea being as queen c6, I just take and bishop c6, knight d6, and I pick up a queen and win the game. And just like that, Vincent, after multiple losses in the draw against Yağız, counterattacking in the previous round, he now wins the second game of the tournament and now is on 2.5 points. And he'll be playing Hans Niemann in the next round with 5 pieces. Another interesting game was played between Javokhir Sindarov, the guy who is going to be playing in the candidates, and Yağız Erdoğan, who is probably the most talented youngster you'll ever see. Faustino is also one of them, but he's playing in the challenger section, and by the way, he's doing fantastic as well. So we get to the following position. Position is equal, black can play bishop g7, but again, I was saying about Keymer and Aravindh that, you know, yes, computer might show that the position is equal, but practically speaking, I mean, it might become tough to play bishop g7. There is some g4, which might be a bit unpleasant, because now it takes, you gotta play queen b5, and it looks like, you know, black are actually getting away from protecting their king, but apparently black are holding this position. But again, kind of complicated. But instead we have bishop g5, which looks very logical, but now g4 comes, and after h takes g4, h takes g4, king g7, there's king d3 threatening queen h7 and threatening to take on d5. King c7, king g1, bishop e6, c4, so that is already kind of inaccuracy. White were supposed to play queen h7 after king f8, knight e6 takes, and rook d3, and rook was coming to f3, and queen f4, which the first move to come to mind. There's queen h8 and queen takes, and there's just not enough resources to deliver perpetual. But instead we got the following position, where after queen f4, king g6, it's suddenly not so winnable. And as it turned out, a few moves later, we got to the following position, where after queen f5 takes and rook c4, the position is simply equal. 0, 0, 0, 0. I mean, why have 2 extra pawns? But this is probably gonna fall, or this one is gonna fall, or this one is gonna fall. So it's very complicated to keep all these pawns alive. But later on, so Javokhir played this for a while, rook d4, and it indeed looks like a draw, because look, double pawns, you have g7 pawn, you potentially have a target on a3, it's tough to win this one. But rook a7, king f8, rook a4 takes the pawn, now rook g1, king h5, king f7, rook a6, rook g2, and now a4, rook g3 was a final, rook g2 was a final mistake, so computer says rook h1, and after king g4, rook g1, king f3, apparently due to all these checks, king d5, rook d1, there's not much that you know, white can do. Rook d4, a4, rook f4 takes this pawn as well. Let's say rook f5. I mean, this already is a drawn position, just because there's just at some point black may just give up this rook for the pawn and draw the game. So honestly, I'm not sure what was going through the head, because rook g2 is kind of looks logical. Rook f1, yeah, kind of makes a lot of sense. But rook g2 turned out to be like a huge mistake, and it looks like the position is the same, but it just looks like, you know, white have a couple of extra tempos to go with. So a3, rook a3, rook a8, king f6, king g4, king f7, a6, a7, and now king is on time to play king f7, but now f6. And that's a very typical move. Now the idea is that she takes f6, rook h8, and white wins the game. And that's exactly what happened. And if king f6, rook f8. So if, let's say, black plays something like rook a5, just to make sure king never goes anywhere, there is f takes g7, king g7, and now f5. Rook a4, king g5, rook a5, and now, I don't know, this. You can go king f5, you can go king f4, you can go king d3. And the problem is f6 is coming no matter what happens. So let's say rook a6, and there is simple f6. And now if rook f6, you can play rook d8, and pawn promotes, and if king f6, rook f8, and once again, you're going to win this game. So Javokhir won the game and joins the leaders. And we had another very, very interesting game between Arjun Erigaisi, who is one of the... He's on top 10, right? He's on top 10. He was playing against Vladimir Fedoseev, who lost to Hans Niemann in 16 moves. Then he beat Vincent Keymer, who is the first seed. Then he drew against Javokhir, he drew against Jordan, and now he plays Arjun. So he plays a 5, already inaccuracy on move number 8. What's surprising is Vladimir apparently has some problems with opening preparation. Otherwise, I cannot explain what happens to him against Hans specifically, and now against Arjun. He lets his opponent get a huge advantage right away. So castle takes knight a6. So now you might be wondering why not play, let's say, king d5. There is knight 7 fork. Knight 7 fork is a serious problem. So knight a6 and little a becomes almost losable. So bishop f6 is a mistake. Computer says e4 is passed, which is surprising considering that there's knight f4, bishop d8, knight f3, apparently bishop e7 line works. And now let's say if rook e8 attacking the bishop, there's simple knight f3, rook e7, and bishop b5, and the rook is simply restricted. d6, d7 is coming, and it looks like actually, black are hopeless. So as opposed to that, we have takes, and now e4, bishop d7, and Vladimir played some great chess. He plays f5, he attacks the center, knight d7, king b6, knight f6. He's trying to open up. He doesn't let this king castle, so there are some problems for white piece for sure. King a7, king h8, b5, when specifically rook f1, rook d1 has to be played, you already know that something is not going okay. Rook d8, bishop g6, knight h5, knight also goes to f4 at some point, rook c6, attacking the pawn. Now king d5 is a blunder because after rook c3, brilliant rook move. Now this cannot be taken due to king f3 check, knight e2, and knight f4, and it turns out that if queen moves, let's say, to b7, doesn't matter, c6, there is knight g2 checkmate. So you gotta be extremely careful. The best move is to give up a queen actually, but of course nobody is going to play this position because it's completely lost. So king d5 was basically a decisive blunder because now black are coming in to get the skin. So king d2, knight f4 takes, and it turns out this piece is simply lost. Bishop is not on time to protect. Bishop e1, bishop d3 doesn't work, bishop c4 doesn't work. So you gotta do something else. Rook f2, bishop d3, and now Vladimir took the piece and converted this pretty smoothly. Rook e8, knight f5, knight d3 takes the pawn, and after rook f8, Arjun resign. And going to the standings, Hans, Nagelbek, and Javokhir are 3 joint leaders with 3.5 points. Jordan, Vladimir, and Gukesh, who actually ended up winning in round number 5 as well. A lot of decisive games, surprisingly. He's on 3 points too. Then we have Matthias Brugan, Arjun, Vincent 2.5, Yağız 2, Prague, Anish, Taidemangian, and Aravindh at 1.5 each. So it's very exciting, and as far as pairing go for the next round, Nadirbiak is playing Gukesh. That already becomes like rivalry between those two, because they had a couple of very, very important games in the Olympiads and so on. Anish plays against Tai, Vladimir Prague, Matthias Arjun, Yağız Jordan, Aravindh Javokhir, and the game I'm gonna be watching out for is Hans Niemann versus Vincent Keymer. An extremely exciting game. Let's see what happens, and I'll see you on Friday after round number 6. Bye bye.